into the matrix of the mind. Come on in, it's fine. Sit with me in this storybook land and listen to the story firsthand. It may scare you and I won't spare you, because you entered of your own free will. You have entered the dark zone. Now you must sit still. You're in the dark zone. You're in the dark zone.
Indeed, we are here in the dark zone, WCAK 1124 AM. We will sit in the matrix of the mind tonight and share emails of real paranormal events that have happened to you. Yes, you. The listeners of this show have sent in hundreds of emails of real events they have experienced. I do apologize in advance if you sent one in and it did not make it to the show tonight, but that does not mean it will not make it to the next email episode. These emails consist tonight of paranormal stories, lost time stories, ghost stories, a UFO sighting, and much, much, much more. Let's jump right in. This comes from Larry in Ohio. I'm a regular listener. I've heard all the stories, the weird lights in the sky and the spooky whispers. At the time, I never thought I'd have a story to tell of my own. What I saw wasn't a UFO or a monster or some bizarre thing that's hard to believe. In fact, it was my grandfather. The weird thing is he had been dead for 2 years at that point. This happened when I was 22, living in my first apartment by myself. It was a cold November night, the kind where, the air, it just feels heavy and damp and moist, cold. I was sitting in my living room and the blinds were open, and I was just watching some sort of old TV show or movie, half asleep. And it was just a normal night, a quiet night, the kind that you hope for on a late Friday after work, that you're just going to lay there and eventually fall asleep in the quietness. Nothing interesting ever happens on those nights. But then that's when it happened. I heard a loud dog bark, and I glanced up from the screen and looked out the window. Across the street, there he was, my grandfather. He was running. I remembered just a gut punch feeling, a kind of sick, sinking feeling in my stomach. The first thing that came to my mind was, no, that can't be him. But it was. It was so completely him that there wasn't a single doubt in my mind, even for a second after that. He was wearing his old gray flannel shirt, the one that he used to wear, when he would do yard work or working on the farm, and he was wearing his faded blue jeans. Even the way he ran was familiar. Not a smooth jog, but that kind of hurried, loping stride he had, that it was kind of like a one-of-a-kind gait where his knee looked like it was stiff. And he was holding his hands in that particular way that only he did when he was carrying something, or he was just cold, his hands were cold, sort of cupped together in front of him. But he wasn't carrying anything, he was just running. And the whole thing, it just felt wrong to me. It never run like that, at least only on a few occasions, like if he was chasing off a stray dog off the farm or something like that, but very rarely. This wasn't a casual run. It was urgent. He looked like he was running from something, or maybe running to something, but he was doing it with a strange sort of determination, for sure. I just sat there, my mind trying to catch up with my eyes. I remember rubbing them hard and blinking a few times, hoping to clear away the image, hoping it was just a smudge on the window or a trick maybe of the light. But when I opened them, he was still there, moving faster now, crossing the street and heading for the corner. The streetlights flickered, and he passed. And for just a split second, I saw his face. It wasn't a grimace of pain or a look of joy or anything. It was just an expression of pure, focused intent. He looked like he had a purpose, a destination. And then he was gone. He just disappeared at the end of the block, swallowed up by the darkness. Not a flicker of his silhouette. He just vanished. I sat there for what felt like an hour, but I'm sure it was only a few minutes, staring at the empty space where he had been. The TV was still on, but I couldn't hear it. My heart was pounding so loud in my chest, I felt like the entire building could hear it. Well, I wanted to call my mom right away, but what was I going to say? I just saw Grandpa running down the street as a ghost? That sounds insane, and it was insane. But it felt so real. The cold night air looked the same, smelled the same. I could feel the chill coming through the glass. And I don't know. I felt his presence out there. It was like the world had changed in that instant. Like a veil had been lifted and maybe I had seen something that I wasn't supposed to see. Since then, things have been different. I see shadows that remind me of him. Just a flicker in the corner of my vision, a shape in a hallway that's maybe just a little too familiar. Or I'll get this feeling, like a sudden drop in temperature, and I just feel it, I just know he's around. It's not a scary feeling, not exactly. It's more of a profound loneliness. Like I saw a part of him that's maybe lost, or maybe he can't get home, I'm not sure. I'm 41 now, and I still get chills thinking about that night. It's been almost 20 years, and I still feel like I'm holding on to a secret that no one would ever believe. I've never been able to explain it, but I thought I would write in now that you are giving us this avenue here tonight, Sal. I know what I saw, and I know it was real. Thanks for this opportunity, Larry. Now, these are the type of stories that we were looking for when we opened up the post in YouTube for the channel. I wanted to be able to give people an avenue to sit down in the solace of their own home and calmly write what their story was, or their event was, or what happened to them, because people try to tell these stories, or they don't tell these stories, and that's the problem. We never get to hear them because they just get mocked, ridiculed, belittled, and they don't want to tell them. And I don't blame them. So sitting down in the solace of your own home, writing an email, no one's going to belittle you. We're just going to share them all right here on this Halloween night. So let's enjoy what we have coming. This one comes from Randy in Texas. Hey, Sal. This is Randy down here in Texas, and I'm a new listener to your Dark Zone show. I saw your post about sharing personal stories, and it got me to thinking about something I ain't never told a soul. It's just too dang weird, too hard to swallow. I've tried to shove it out of my head, chalk it up to a bad dream or maybe some kind of brain hiccup, but this memory's like a burr in my boot. It just won't quit. Well, here's what went down. It was a few years back, one of them classic Texas summer nights where the air's so thick it's like breathing through a damn wet dish rag. It's pushing midnight, and I'm pacing my house like a caged coon. I ain't tired, ain't bored, just antsy, like something crawling under my skin. Well, I ain't one for late night strolls. Heck, I'm usually sawing logs by 10. But something that night was tugging on me, like a voice in my head saying, "Get your butt outside." It was weird, like I was a puppet or something. Somebody else was pulling the strings. So I headed out, just wandering down the street, no real plan. The neighborhood's quiet as a church mouse. Nothing but the hum of street lights and a dog barking off in the distance. I can still remember the smell of it. Warm asphalt, fresh cut grass, and that sweet smell of jasmine blooming in somebody's yard. But it all felt off, like my senses were cranked to 11, but my brain was in a fog. Well, I wasn't sleepy or woozy, I was just kind of like floating, I guess. Like I was watching myself walk through some kind of movie set. The houses, the porch lights, they all looked familiar, but it was like I was just along for the ride and kind of not really there in my head. Then bam, it's like I snapped out of it. Standing there, holding my phone, no clue why I even pulled it out. I glanced at the screen, and it's 2:15 a.m. 2 hours and 15 minutes. Just poof, gone. One thoughts, no thoughts, nada. Nothing in my head. A big old blank spot. And here's where it gets kind of freaky. I ain't on my street no more. I'm in this little park 3 blocks away. I'm standing there, looking around, and it hits me like a ton of bricks. Well, I got no idea how I got there. It's just like I was beamed down from a dang spaceship or something. I'm trying to piece it together, but there's nothing to piece. My boots ain't scuffed, my clothes ain't messed up, nothing out of place. It's like I didn't move. But I did. I hightailed it home, heart pounding like a jackrabbit. I got inside, locked the door, and leaned up against it, trying to catch my breath. Even now, talking about it, it gives me the heebie-jeebies. I've racked my brain 1,000 times, trying to make sense of all of this. Was I sleepwalking? Nah. I was wide awake. I remember everything except for that 2 hours and 15 minutes. Some kind of brain glitch, like a seizure? Maybe, but I felt fine as a frog's hair. Nothing's adding up here. And there's one more thing, Sal. This creepy feeling I can't shake. It's like I wasn't alone out there in that 2-hour blackout. Something was with me, just out of sight, like it was watching me or something. Watching me from the shadows. I can't put my finger on it, but I know it was there. Still gives me the chills. I'm 50 now. That night's still stuck in my craw. It's like a secret I ain't supposed to tell. I don't know what happened, but I know it was real, and I know it's been haunting me ever since. That came from Randy in Texas. You are listening to WCAK 1124 AM. We will take one fast break and get right back to the emails and the stories. You are here in the Dark Zone.
Come closer, child. I'll tell you a secret. Oasis beef jerky, it's no ordinary meat. Oh no, it's tougher, darker, born in smoke and salt, and cured until it screams. Every strip tears like sinew, every bite drips with flavor stolen from the fire itself. And once you taste it, it clings to you. It wraps around your tongue like a curse. You'll chew and you'll chew, but the hunger will never die. You'll crave more, always more, until the bag is empty. And still, you won't let it go. Oasis jerky doesn't feed you. It owns you and gnaws at your belly until you surrender to every last shred. Every snack, but not everybody survives the bag. And the only way to calm the hunger, the only way, my child, is to wash it down with a blood-red Oasis fruit punch flavored soda. So let the curse begin with every bag. And remember to make Oasis your basis for life.
Ashes black, the moon will bleed. Whispered names are all I need. Bones will rattle, hearts will fall. Answer now my wicked call. Spider silk and serpent's tongue. Your soul is mine, the curse is sung. Crying shadows scream in vain. You'll never see the light again. The war axe is now upon you. The buffs you take will not cleanse you. The warlock's curse is now upon you. The buffs you take will not cleanse you.
Welcome back to the Dark Zone here at WCAK 1124 AM. I am your host, Sal Rock. Here on a Halloween night, we are reading emails of true ghost stories that were sent in by the YouTube listeners of this channel. Now, I can't really verify if every one of these stories is true, nor can I deny that they are true. So we are going to read them, enjoy them, and have a good time here on Halloween. My next email is from Sammy in Maine. Sammy writes, Sal, my job keeps me up late, and your shows are a great comfort on those long, quiet drives home. I've heard so many amazing, terrifying, and incredible stories on the shows that you post. I would have never called in Art's show. I just wouldn't have had the guts to. But when I saw your post email in, I thought I would share this. I'm a really grounded person, a realist, but this thing that happened, I just don't know. I've never told anyone this story, not even my family. It happened a few years ago, but I think about it all the time. It still feels as real today as it did that night that it happened. You see, my best friend, a woman named Emily, she had died several years earlier. It was a sudden car crash, one of those senseless tragedies that just leaves you feeling empty or in deep loss. We were inseparable since we were kids. We shared everything, our hopes, our fears, our dreams, our future. We used to talk every single day, Sal, every day without fail. We talked about everything. We talked about anything, silly stuff, you know. We would talk about a TV show we were binging all the way up to the serious stuff like what college we wanted to attend, or did we want to get married? Did we want to have kids? Our future plans. Losing her, well, it was almost unbearable to me. It's just like my world lost all of its color. This happened about 5 years after she passed. I was in my bedroom one night, just reading a book. The only light was the small lamp on that was on my nightstand. The book I was reading wasn't very good. In my mind, it was just wandering here in and out of the book. And I wasn't really thinking about her or anything else in particular, just trying to relax and get my mind off a rough day at work. And then I felt it. This presence, a sudden stillness in the air. I can't really explain it. It was like the air in the room just changed. I felt a sense of unease wash over me, and then there she was, standing at the end of my bed, my best friend, Emily. She was just standing there looking at me, smiling like nothing had ever happened. She looked exactly as I remembered her. Same dark hair, same kind of tired, gentle eyes that crinkled up in the corners when she smiled. In fact, she was wearing the same worn-out hoodie that she used to wear to everything she was so comfortable in. Sal, she didn't look like a ghost from a movie. She wasn't transparent. She wasn't glowing. She just looked like real, like she had just walked in through my bedroom door. Well, my heart stopped. I couldn't move. I couldn't even speak. I just stared. I thought my mind maybe was finally cracking from overworking and complete exhaustion, something like that. I blinked a couple of times, and when I looked again, she was still there. She was just watching me for a moment, and that gentle, familiar smile on her face. And then she spoke. Her voice was just as I remembered it, soft and a little bit raspy. She didn't talk about anything dramatic, no grand pronouncements, no warnings, no messages, and nothing weird beyond the grave. She simply said, I just miss talking to you every day. And just like that, the shock subsided and a sense of some sort of comfort came over me. We talked like we had always. We didn't have a heavy spiritual conversation. She asked me about stuff like, what was the book that I was reading? And I told her silly stuff that happened at work that day. And, she laughed just like she always did. She asked me about my plans for the weekend. Nothing extraordinary, just normal life things we were talking about. It was the most comforting moment of my life, but also the most heartbreaking and the one that turned into the most dreadful. It was a conversation I had longed for years. It felt so real and so natural. She wasn't sad or angry, just like missing our daily talks like I was. We spent what felt like hours, but I'm sure it was just minutes, just talking quietly. She told me she was happy, sort of, and that she was doing okay, kind of. I don't know what that means, where she was or what she meant by those words. Then as she finished a sentence, a shadow crossed her face. Her familiar, tired eyes went black as tar, and her skin became withered and papery, stretched over her tight bones. The gentle smile contorted into a grimace as she leaned toward me, a whisper in a voice tearing through the silent room. Death is coming for you soon, Sammy. She didn't disappear in a flash of light. She just dissolved into the air like a mist, leaving me behind an unbearable cold in the room. I didn't know why she came or why our conversation was so ordinary at the beginning. It wasn't really even bittersweet anymore. It was horrifying. I remember it perfectly. The way her voice sounded, the way she laughed at something tiny, and the overwhelming feeling that she was truly, really there in my room with me. But what I remember the most is the way her eyes turned to black coal and the terrifying message that she left me. I get goosebumps thinking about it, but not really from fear. It's more of a deep sense of dread. Thanks for letting me write this to you. That's from Sammy in Maine. Well, Sammy, I have to tell you, wow. She came in just as if she was your best friend that you always knew. And maybe that was just darkness and, hiding behind a veil. Because obviously that ended with somebody that was not your best friend. Wow, that happened to me. I don't know. I just don't know what I would think. Let's get on to the next email. This is from June in Pennsylvania. And I have to say, before we read this real quickly, that part of the area of the country, like the original 13 colonies and up in that area, the northeast of the area, and even the south, because of, I think all the things went on with the Civil War in that era of time, seemed to have a lot more ghosts. And maybe there was a lot more uneasy killings, murders, deaths that went on way back at the beginning of the country. So maybe it's a little more prevalent in that part of the country than it is maybe on the western side of the states. But let me read this, and there's a reason I brought that up, but let me go ahead and read this to you. Dated September 2012. Did you ever have the feeling that you aren't alone or that somebody is watching you? I retired to my bedroom one night to the feeling that I wasn't alone. The feeling was so strong that I decided to leave the TV on, hoping that it would thwart my unseen visitor. I prefer daylight encounters when possible. After a few hours, my eyes were burning and I had to shut off the TV. No sooner did I turn my back to the wall in the dark when an unseen hand placed itself gently on my back. Oddly enough, it gave me a comforting feeling and I immediately fell asleep. Okay, let me stop there for a second, because what I was saying earlier, if that happened to me, if I'm laying in bed and a hand appears as a feeling on my back, I am not immediately falling asleep. In fact, I'm probably jumping out of the bed, maybe so hard that I hit my head on the ceiling, and running out of that room. Because you would have to be used to those kind of apparitions in your life. And apparently this person was. But let's carry on. About 2 weeks later, I lay down to go to sleep. I'd always had the knowing that someone liked to stand in my bedroom doorway peering in. So I wind up sleeping facing the wall. But this time, for some reason, I didn't. I was lying in bed, still awake, when a full-bodied apparition was clearly visible in the dark room. He was there only for an instant. Brown hair, short 1980s style ski sweater with red, white, and blue snowflake design type, baggy jeans, a short man with a sad and uncertain look on his face. He appeared to be in his late 40s. But the memorable thing was, one shoulder was slightly down. I knew he had pain in his legs because he had a limp. He vanished instantly, but left me with an impression that I should talk to a particular shopkeeper nearby and she would be able to identify him. The next morning, I found the shopkeeper, who told me that this man was we'll call him Mr. Blank, for we don't want to bring names into it. Who told me that Mr. Blank, a former landlord of my building, but she said I should really talk to so-and-so, who had lived in the neighborhood for years and knew the landlord well. She would be the best one to consult with. We were standing outside talking about this when the woman of the shopkeeper had just suggested I talk to walked by. She identified him by his look, but especially his limp. The old landlord continues to visit this building just as he did in life. He has come and opened my neighbor's door and my door, even on the same morning. About 3 weeks after, I was talking to the shopkeeper downstairs when the smoke alarm in my reading parlor went off. I raced upstairs to find the room filled with smoke, but could find no cause for it. I checked everywhere, but there was no reason for it, and suddenly, the smoke was gone. Then I realized there had been no smell of burning, that my eyes weren't burning, my lungs weren't burning. I believe it was old Mr. Blank that was just checking the smoke alarm. That comes from June in Pennsylvania. And again, I have to tell you, apparition, ghost, whatever you want to call it, if it's putting its hands on me as I'm laying in bed in the dark, I am up and out of there. All right, let's go to the next one. Okay, before I read this one, this is not a ghost story, but it's pretty Halloween appropriate, I think, because it's got a really bizarre feel to it. But before I read it, this is a topic that I have always been fascinated with. It's something that I always wanted to do a full show on, and maybe still in the future I will do a full show on this, but it's about doppelgangers and people that have actually seen, met, interacted with their doppelganger. And I just find that to be one of the weirdest things ever. And I don't know, isn't there a saying that everybody has a doppelganger somewhere on the planet Earth? Well, I don't know that to be true, and I don't know it to be not true. But it's just always been a fascinating thing to me that you could run into your doppelganger. And is it just someone that looks exactly like you? Or is it more than that? So when I got this particular email, I thought I would throw it into tonight's show here on Halloween. This email comes from Mike in Kansas. Mike writes, "Hi, Sal. I saw your post on your YouTube channel, and it convinced me to finally share something that happened to me. Now, I don't know if I'm even ready to talk about this, but it's too strange. It's too personal. But a few years ago, I was working as a waiter in a small, kind of rundown restaurant. It wasn't a big deal. It was just a summer job that I had picked up after I dropped out of college, and nothing fancy. It was the kind of place where the night shift was kind of like just a slow blur of clanking plates and the same 10 damn songs on the radio over and over. But that one night, something happened, and I just can't shake it and never will. It was a Tuesday, a slow night, like every Tuesday in that restaurant. The kind of night where you're just kind of standing by the register, counting down the minutes until you can go home, serving one or two tables in between. Well, I was just bringing a table their food, a couple of burgers and some fries, when I noticed a man sitting by the window in my section. He was facing away from me, looking out at the streetlights, but even from the back, something about him felt familiar. My stomach just kind of dropped a little bit. I had a weird feeling in the pit of my stomach. I tried to shake it off, thinking that, that I'm just getting tired and it's been a long shift. But as I got closer to his table, I got a full, clear look at him. And that's when my brain froze. He looked exactly like me. Not just similar, Sal. Exactly. Same height, same build, same unruly mop of dark hair. Now, the haircut was different, but it was the same hair. Even the way he held his shoulders, a slump like I've had my entire life. When I saw him, my legs almost gave out. I put their food down on the table, my hands shaking slightly, and I moved to take an order from the new table from two new people next to them. My heart was just pounding. My ribs felt like they were going to be broken. I kept my head down, trying to act normal, but my mind was screaming inside. It was at that moment that I turned and I saw who he was with. My high school sweetheart. Her name was Sarah. We had broken up right after graduation, and I had always regretted how those things ended. Always wondered what would have happened if I had just made different choices, better choices. And now, here she was, sitting across from him, smiling, and they looked very happy, leaning in, talking to him. She looked older. She definitely looked happier. Her hair was different. It was cut short, but it was her 100%. My mind, I just couldn't process it. My brain kept flashing between the images of her and that man across from her who looked, I don't know, exactly like me, or I don't know, was it me? They were married, or at least they were acting like they were married and sure looked married. She had a ring on her finger, big diamond. They were laughing about something, sparkling eyes on both sides, and he reached across the table and grabbed her hands like they were in complete bliss. I was looking like a version of myself from another life. One that I had gone to school, made different choices, had gotten everything that I ever wanted. I don't know, all these kind of unsettling thoughts were racing through my mind, and I don't know, I just felt a weird mix of dread, jealousy, I guess. I tried to act normal, just a waiter doing his job. I refilled their water glasses, walked past their table, keeping a distance a few times, just to get another look. Every time I saw him, I felt this strange, almost physical ache in my chest. I couldn't speak, couldn't bring myself to say a word to either one of them. I just kept thinking, how is this possible? How can this guy exist? Was I looking at a parallel reality? Was this what my life could have been and should have been if I made better choices and I didn't make that one big mistake coming out of high school, the one that cost me everything? Well, by the end of the night, they paid their bill and left. Halfway through the dinner, I had the second waiter take over services as I couldn't approach up close again. I watched them go out the window. They walked out of the restaurant and into the night, hand in hand, looking very happy. I stood there, leaning against the counter, feeling like I had just glimpsed a life that used to belong to me, or should have belonged to me, that somehow I made dumb decisions and lost. Was it a different version of my life that had been given away? Was it a completely different story that I should have had? Now I'm just the waiter? I don't know. I really don't know, Sal. What I do know is what I saw that night, and it haunts me every single day and every time that I think about it. That comes from Mike in Kansas, and you are here in the Dark Zone on WCAK 1124 AM Halloween night. We will be right back after these messages.
I saw the lady dressed in white. She walks the graveyard every night. Don't let her catch you when she cries, or you'll be gone by morning light. And it will be with her delight.
I shouldn't be talking about this, but you need to know. They said Oasis corn chips were just snacks, just corn and salt. But the first time I opened the bag, I knew something wasn't right. The crunch wasn't normal. It was loud, too loud, echoing in my head like bones just snapping in the dark. And the flavor, it clings to you, it doesn't let go. Every bite is sharper, meaner, like the chips are eating me. I told myself I'd stop, but the bag wouldn't let me. I swear I heard it whisper, finish us, all of us. I tried to resist, but I couldn't. No one can. Oasis doesn't just fill you up, it takes you apart, piece by piece. Everybody snacks. But the only way out, the only way to quit the hunger, is to wash them down with an ice-cold cherry soda from Oasis. Pray you've got one nearby. And remember to make Oasis your basis for life.
There's a shadow in the hollow. Step too close and you will follow. He'll lead you where the lost souls go, and never let your spirit go.
Indeed, we are here in the Dark Zone on WCAK 1124 AM. I am your host, Sal Rock. On this Halloween night, we are reading emails that were sent in by the listeners of this show. Now, for me, when I hear stories straight from a police officer, a fireman, a priest, for some reason they have more credibility with me. I don't know that to be true, but for me, they do have more credibility. This was sent in by Jerry in Illinois, 20-year security guard. Jerry writes, Sal, I worked security for 20 years, all of it on the night shifts. When you spend that much time in the dark, you get used to a lot of weird stuff. Drunks, teenagers, late night contractors. You see plenty of strange things at 1 or 2 in the morning. But this one night, this one encounter, I never forgot it, and I never will. Nothing before or since has ever been weirder. I was doing my usual rounds in the squad car at a big office complex. It was a cold, clear night. Every building was dark, locked up, and silent. Just the usual hum of a few HVAC units and the crunch of my tires on the gravel. I was about to head to the far end of the property when something caught my eye. Out of nowhere, I saw a figure run across the parking lot and disappear into the shadows between 2 of the buildings. At first, I didn't think much of it. I figured it was a trespasser, maybe a drunk who got turned around, or maybe just kids messing around. Well, I hit the gas and drove over fast, my spotlight sweeping the area. I parked the car, grabbed my flashlight, and stepped out. Man, I just remember that chill hitting me. The moment the beam of my flashlight hit the space between the buildings, the figure saw me. It bolted deeper into the corridor, and I shouted, "Hey, stop!" But it didn't hesitate. So I gave chase. The corridor was a tight space, a dead end between 2 brick walls, and I figured, well, they were cornered. So I jogged in slowly towards them, ready to confront whoever it was. I was ready for an argument, for an explanation, or a possible face-off. But when my flashlight beam finally locked onto them, I froze. The figure was thin and huddled against the wall, but it was its eyes that stopped me dead in my tracks. They weren't just reflecting the light, they glowed like an animal's would in the dark. A bright, sharp, unnatural yellow. I saw them for a fraction of a second, and then it did something no person should be able to do. Without any warning, it just started to climb, straight up the sheer brick wall. It was an 18-foot climb, Sal, but it went up so fast and so smoothly. There was no scrambling, no slipping, no hesitation. It just moved like gravity didn't even matter. It was impossibly fast and impossibly wrong. Before I could even raise my hand or say any word to it, it pulled itself onto the roof and it was gone. I stood there in silence for a long time, my flashlight beam still pointing at the top of the wall. I just waited and listened, maybe to see if it would show up again, but there was nothing. Just the quiet hum of the building and my own heart pounding in my ears. If I never saw it again, I have never told anyone at the company what I saw. I just wrote it off as a trespasser I couldn't catch. But I'll never forget the way those eyes looked at me and reflected in the light, and how fast it vanished. I don't think it was human at all. That night, I didn't just chase a trespasser, Sal. I chased something else. Maybe something from the other side. That's Jerry in Illinois. So many of you have had different encounters in life, whether it be something like Jerry encountered, whether it be an apparition or a grandmother or a loved one coming back to you in the middle of the night, a close person to you that has passed on that came back to warn you of something in the future. There's just so many different stories in this paranormal world, and we are now lacking a place for individuals to tell their stories. And I'm so glad that people took the time to write these down in emails and send them in so we could do this show, and I would be able to put these stories out for you. Let's move on. This next story comes from Greg in California. Sal, my girlfriend, Sarah, told me this story a few months into our relationship. I had been bugging her about why she hated her old apartment, and she finally decided to come clean and tell me. She lived alone in a small one-bedroom place in a pretty old building. She said from the beginning that she just had a bad feeling about that place. Sometimes, in the middle of the night, she'd wake up because she felt a weight on the bed next to her, like as if someone had just gotten in with her. She'd lie there, frozen with fear, and feel the sheets being pulled tight around her, pinning her down. Other times, she would feel something rub against her legs, slowly and deliberately, as if it was exploring her. She never saw anything, and the feeling would always fade after a few minutes, leaving her in a cold sweat. She tried to tell herself it was just her imagination, but the fear, well, it was always real. She couldn't shake the feeling that she just wasn't alone. Well, around the 5th time this happened, something was different. She woke up to the feeling of the sheets being pulled tight around her again. She just lay there, petrified, and that familiar, cold dread filled the room. But this time, she forced her eyes open and looked into the corner, and there it was, a tall, dark figure, just standing there. It didn't make a move and didn't make a sound. It was just a shape, a shadow that shouldn't have been there, staring at her with what she felt like eyes of pure malice. The moment she saw it, the pressure on the sheets intensified, holding her down until she squeezed her eyes shut. When she opened them again, the feeling was gone, and the corner of the room was empty. After she told me this, I got curious. I started looking into the history of the old building and found an old article in the archives of a local newspaper. The building had been a boarding house in the 1920s. A man with a violent past, a known associate of local gangs, had lived there and would often bring prostitutes back to his room. One night, a woman who he had been seeing for some while came to the room, and they had a violent argument. Neighbors heard screaming, but no one intervened. The man was found dead the next morning, stabbed multiple times in the neck and the chest. The article said the woman was never found and that they believe he was murdered in his sleep. I told Sarah what I found, and she just looked at me and her face turned pale. I asked her what her room apartment number was, and she told me the number. My stomach dropped. It was the exact same room where the man was murdered. I told her to get out of there and not ever to go back. She packed a bag and moved in with me that very night. Well, we're still living together, and she's never had another experience like that. But sometimes, when she's asleep, I still see her grab the sheets and pull them tight around herself as she sleeps. Sal, I just hope that whatever was in that room, whatever she saw in that corner, or whatever happened in that room, stayed in that room and didn't follow her here. That comes from Greg in California. Well, Greg, this story falls in line with many, many other stories. A lot of emails that were sent into Art Bell's show about entities, or whatever you want to call them, spirits, demons, whatever, that have a craving for the living. And I'll just leave it at that, and I'll let you guys ponder on that for a minute. Let's move on. Hi, Sal. I don't tell this one very often, but I feel like I needed to put this down somewhere, and maybe your listeners will understand better than most people out there. I was 28 when this happened. My wife and I had been married just a little over 2 years. We were driving home late at night after our dinner at our parents' house just outside of town. A drunk driver ran a stop sign and hit us broadside. Well, I don't remember much after the sound of metal tearing. I think I blacked out immediately. When I woke up, I was in the hospital, hooked to machines and just hurting everywhere. And there she was, my wife, sitting in the chair right next to my bed, holding my hand like she always did when I was sick. She looked perfect, not a scratch on her, and she smiled and said, you scared me half to death. Well, we talked for hours that night. She reminded me of our honeymoon down in the Keys, the little motel with the broken air conditioner. We laughed about how we almost missed our wedding cake because my cousin spilled champagne all over the table. She told me how much she loved that vacation we had taken out west, and The one where we camped under the stars, and, well, to be honest, I burned dinner every night. We laughed about it some more. It was just, a normal, familiar, comforting feeling that I had with her that night. I thought we were both going to be okay. The next 2 nights were the same. Every time I woke up in the hospital room, there she was, sitting in that same chair right next to my bed, always smiling, always holding my hand, talking about everything we had been through in our short years together. Plans we had, little memories that, well, only we would have shared. I didn't question it. I was just grateful that she was alive and that we had both made it. Well, on the 4th day, a priest came in. He asked me if I wanted to pray or if I needed help making arrangements. And I didn't understand. I asked him, arrangements? Arrangements for what? He looked at me kind of funny and said, well, for the funeral services, son. I laughed at first, thinking he must have had me mixed up with somebody else. But then I looked at him and I told him, you mean me? He shook his head. He said, no, son, for your wife. She didn't survive the crash. She died instantly. I argued with him. I told him he was wrong and that she had been with me every night, right there in that chair, talking with me. I could still feel her hand in mine, and I could still hear her voice. The priest put his hand on my shoulder and said softly, sometimes the ones we love stay close to help us through. Then he left me alone in the room. I looked over at the chair, and for the first time in 4 nights, it was empty. No warmth in the cushion, no hand in mine. Just the steady beep of the monitors and the smell of antiseptic. She never came back after that. It's been decades now, and, well, I've remarried and built a new life, but I'll never forget those nights. I don't know if she was a dream, a spirit, or just my broken brain trying to cope with everything that had happened. But to me, it was as real gets. I got to say goodbye to her in the best way possible, like we were just 2 people in love, sitting and talking about the life we were building. And I can tell you this much, Sal, those memories are the clearest thing that I have from that entire year. That comes from Ellis in Indiana. You are listening to The Dark Zone, WCAK 1124 AM. I am your host, Sal Rock, and tonight we are reading YouTube listener-only emails, true paranormal and ghost stories they have sent in. Let's carry on into the darkness. This comes from Tammy in Kentucky. I've never written this down before, ever. Even just seeing the words on the screen, well, it's making my hands shake. But I need to tell somebody who might actually believe it. This happened to me when I was 29, and I swear on my life, Sal, every word is true. I had just moved into a small, cheap rental house. It was nothing special. It's old and creaky floors, bad wallpaper, the whole thing. I was finally alone after a rough breakup, and at first, it was all fine. It felt quiet, nice. Then the nights started. The first time, I woke up suddenly. It was around 3 a.m., and I heard it, my name being whispered. I opened my eyes, and she was there, a little girl, standing right at the foot of my bed. She looked maybe, I'm not sure, Sal, 7 or 8. She was wearing a pale dress, long dark hair hanging in her face. Her voice was soft, but perfectly clear when she spoke. You need to be careful. I sat up, heart hammering against my ribs, and asked, well, careful of what? Who are you? She didn't answer. She just faded like smoke. It happened again the next night. Same exact time. Same little girl. You need to be careful, she said. Her voice was too calm, too flat. It was like an echo of a voice. Again I begged. Careful of what? Just tell me. She just blinked slowly and disappeared, leaving the room ice cold. By the 3rd and 4th nights, I was completely wrecked. I dreaded falling asleep. My house was starting to smell faintly of damp earth and something rotten right where she appeared. And my cat would start hissing into corners where there was nothing that I could see. Every night at 3 a.m., she stood a little closer. Always the same empty warning, never an explanation. The fifth night, I refused to sleep. I turned on every single light in the house and just sat up reading. It didn't matter. I blinked, and she was right beside my bed this time. Her eyes were wide, and she was whispering, "You need to be careful." I was crying now, begging her to stop, to tell me what was happening. She didn't move. She just tilted her head slightly, then faded again, leaving the sheets around me with a damp, cold feeling. The sixth night, I was delirious. I tried to pray, tried to fight it, but exactly at 3 a.m., my eyes snapped open. She was standing inches from my face this time, looking down at me. But she wasn't the same child anymore. Her skin had turned to a horrifying gray, cracked and dry. Her hair was wet, hanging in clumps. Her eyes scared me, and they still scare me today. Her eyes were pure black, like the empty sockets filled with ink. This time her voice wasn't soft. It was deep, layered with something inhuman and utterly wrong. She leaned down. Her breath was freezing. She didn't whisper the warning this time. She hissed, "You need to be careful because I am coming for your soul." Then she smiled, a wide, jagged, broken thing, and instantly vanished. The room was dead silent except for me screaming myself hoarse. I didn't stay the rest of that night, Sal. I called my sister and begged her to come and get me. I never slept in that house again, and I have never slept alone since. Even now, almost 20 years later, it still bothers me. Nothing has ever come from me, and I still have a hard time sleeping without the fear of that little girl coming back. That's Tammy in Kentucky. And I can tell you guys this. When I was a child, and I can't recall, maybe 5 or 6 years old, I had a black creature stand at the foot of my bed. Now, it never talked to me. All it did was stare at me, and I was wide awake when this happened. This was not a dream. I don't know what it was. It just stood there staring at me at the foot of my bed. Not on the bed, just at the foot of my bed. And it is burned into my memory to this day. It didn't warn me, it didn't scare me, it didn't talk to me like what happened to Tammy, but it certainly had its impact in my mind. Let's go to Hardy in Pennsylvania. Sal, love all the content on your channel and saw your post to send in ghost stories that have happened. This is one of those things that sticks with you no matter how much time passes. Well, we grew up in a small steel town in Pennsylvania. It was one of those kind of places where the mills were closing down and we had to find our own ways to stay busy. Every morning on our way to school, we had passed this one house. The whole town said it was haunted. The windows were all cracked, the vines were growing up the walls, and the front porch was half collapsed. Everyone just kind of went out of their way to avoid that place. Well, Mike and I were about 12, full of ourselves, and we were trying to act tough as young boys do. One morning in March, it was freezing out. We were walking to school. We walked past the house and saw the front gate was wide open. We both just looked at each other and we knew we had to go in. I think I said something stupid like, "Come on, let's prove it's not haunted." Well, the second we stepped in, we were hit with the smell of damp wood and mold, and it was so cold and dim inside, the dust was just hanging in the air. All the furniture was covered with white sheets, and it really did look like a bunch of ghosts were just like standing in line waiting for something. We crept through the living room and then the kitchen. We were whispering, and I don't even know why we were still whispering. It was just the two of us. Then we saw the staircase. The stairs curved up into the shadows, and I swear the air got even colder standing at the bottom of them. We started walking up very slowly, and every step that we stepped on, every step on the way up seemed to creak. It was so dead quiet that these creaks, they seemed 10 times louder than they really were. Well, about halfway up the stairs, I heard it. A faint, like tinny type melody. It sounded like a music box coming from somewhere upstairs. Mike froze, and I knew he had heard it too. Then came the footsteps, slow, heavy, like someone was just pacing back and forth right above our heads. Neither of us said a word. We just looked at each other with our eyes wide and took off. I don't even remember getting out of the stairs or down the stairs. I don't even remember running out of the house. We just ran until we hit the sidewalk. We didn't talk about it on our way to school that day. In fact, it was weeks before either of us even mentioned it. Well, Sal, that was 25 years ago. Mike and I are grown now, and we live in different states, and we have our own families, but whenever we talk, we joke about our haunted house experience and laugh about it. We think it was just our imaginations running wild, but sometimes when I'm alone at night laying in bed, I'll think about that sound, and I can still hear that music box and the footsteps and how real that felt. That comes from Hardy in Pennsylvania. Haunted houses, ghosts, doppelgangers, lost time. What a great way to spend our Halloween evening. This next one comes from Karen in Ohio. Sal, I've carried this story with me most of my life. I've told it a few times, but people usually just laugh at it or shrug it off. I don't care if anyone believes it anymore. I know what I saw, and I know what I heard. When I was 10 years old, my best friend Sarah was 12. We were always in her garage because it was full of old boxes that our parents never unpacked, and it was like being on a treasure hunt every time we were in there. Well, one rainy Saturday, we dug through a stack of dusty crates and found, yes, a Ouija board. Neither of us had ever used one, but of course, we had heard all the stories. Well, kids being kids, we thought it would be funny to see if it worked. We sat cross-legged on the cold cement floor and put our fingers on the planchet. At first, it didn't move at all. We giggled, tried to spook each other, asked it the usual silly questions you would ask, like, is there a ghost in here? What's your name? Then the planchet, it gave a sudden jerk, hard enough to make us both jump. Of course, I accused her of pushing it, but when we lifted our hands completely off, the thing still slid forward like someone had flicked it. That's when I heard it. In fact, that's when we heard it. A voice. Not out loud in the garage exactly, more like it was in our heads, but we both heard it as clear as day. It was a boy's voice. He said his name. He said he had been killed in that very house years before. I'll never forget the way he talked. It wasn't like a conversation, but like he was telling us something he had rehearsed 1,000 times over. He described how he died, how no one had found him, how he was still there. The planchet kept sliding across the board rapidly, spelling out pieces of the same story as he spoke. Sarah started crying. I wanted to stop, but when we tried to move our hands away, the planchet wouldn't stop moving. It even slammed into the side of the board hard enough to knock over a can of soda that we had been drinking. We both panicked. We grabbed the board, ran out into the backyard, and threw it into a burn barrel her parents had kept by the side of the house. We lit it on fire and watched the board twist and blacken. Sarah was sobbing and swore she heard the boy's voice in the smoke saying, "You can't get rid of me." I'll admit it, I heard it too. We never touched another Ouija board after that, and that was 15 years ago. We didn't tell anyone at the time, and when we finally did later, people just laughed at us. But, there was something that I just couldn't shake it. 2 years ago, I went to the library to look up old newspapers on microfilm. After hours of searching, I found it, an article about a boy with the same name that he had given us, murdered in that house decades before. They never found who did it. I sat there in shock, staring at the headline. My stomach dropped and my hands went ice cold. I got up and left the library without printing the article, and I never went back. Since then, every now and then, I'll hear whispering at night when the house is quiet. I'm not sure if I'm hearing that in my head or if it's really happening, No one else in the house ever hears it. Maybe burning that board didn't end it. Maybe that just let him loose. I don't know. All I do know is no one's ever going to convince me or us that we imagined that boy that day in the garage. That comes from Karen in Ohio. Well, Karen, I can tell you this. Though we've heard many, many different stories about Ouija boards, the same could be said about voodoo dolls or witches' potions. It's not necessarily the Ouija board, though I suggest highly avoid them at all costs. It's not necessarily the Ouija board or the voodoo doll or the scroll of paper with the spell on it or any of those other things. What those are avenues to open the doorway. And once you've opened that doorway, and it sounds like you guys opened that doorway that day, I don't know how you close it. It's very hard to close it. Some people are haunted for decades after that. So, Karen, I don't know what's going on with you now, but I wish you the best. Stay away from the Ouija boards all.
Letters move the planchette slides. Voices whisper where darkness hides. Open wide the doorways torn. From your touch the curse is born. Shadows creep, they hear your call. One by one they'll take it all. What you sought you can't restore. The evil's here forevermore. Ouija board, the evil's here forevermore. Ouija board, the evil's here forevermore. Ouija board. Ouija board. Oh, Ouija board. Ouija board.
You are in the dark zone. WCAK 1124 AM. We are here on Halloween night reading emails from the YouTube listeners of this channel. This comes from Trey in Michigan. I don't share this story often. Honestly, I've kept it buried for years because even other medics wouldn't believe it. But it happened when I was 24, my first year as a paramedic. And to be honest, it's haunted me ever since. We got dispatched to a possible suicide. Just another call on paper, but you never really know what you're going to be walking into. My partner and I pulled up to an old apartment building just right after midnight. It was quiet, kind of an eerie kind of quiet, to be honest with you. We rushed in, gear bags slung over the shoulders. On the stairwell, halfway up to the third floor, I spotted a young man sitting there, hunched over, pale and shaking, and I thought, this must be the patient. I ran over, crouched down, and asked him, "Hey man, are you hurt? Do you need help?" He looked at me with extremely sad eyes, the saddest eyes I think I've ever seen. His voice was soft and almost broken, and he replied, I don't think so. No, well, maybe I am. Yeah, I think I am. Well, I was confused. He didn't look injured. He wasn't bleeding. He just seemed lost and like out of it, like he didn't know where he was. I kept trying to talk to him, trying to get information, and he said things like, I didn't want it to end this way. I didn't think it would feel like this. Well, I thought he was just in shock. Then I heard my partner yell from inside the apartment, I need your help in here. I left the kid on the stairs and rushed in, and that's when my blood ran cold. On the floor of the bathroom was the same young man, the same face, same clothes, lying there unconscious with an empty pill bottle nearby. My partner was already on the floor doing compressions, trying to bring him back. Well, I kind of stumbled back into the stairwell and looked out, and the boy I had been talking to was gone. Just vanished. No noise, no nothing, just an empty stairwell. We worked on the, I'll say, real him for what felt like forever, but we couldn't get him back. Time of death was called and we packed it up. But I just couldn't stop thinking about that figure on the stairs, the one who told me that he didn't think it was going to hurt and that he had changed his mind. Well, I realized too late what I had been talking to. I'm sure now it was his spirit, the part of him that was still clinging on, confused, regretting what he had just done. That night, after the paperwork and the cleanup, I sat in my car with my hands on the wheel for a long time. I wasn't shaking from the call itself. I was shaking because I knew I had spoken to somebody who was already dead, or maybe somewhere in between. It's been 17 years since then, and I still see his face sometimes when I close my eyes. He just looked so ordinary, so alive, and yet I don't think he was. That came from Trey in Michigan. Next email. Hey Sal, this is Mike from Colorado, and man, do I have a story for your Halloween listeners. This happened to me and some of my buddies back in the summer of 2002, and I swear, 23 years later, it still gives me chills just thinking about it. So picture this. Me and 6 of my old college friends decided to go camping up in the mountains here in Colorado. There's this lake that we loved, kind of tucked away, not a lot of people around. We hiked up on a Friday afternoon, set up our tents, cooked up some hot dogs, and as the sun went down, we got a nice campfire going. It was one of those perfect nights, stars all over the sky, air so crisp that you can feel it in your lungs, but not really too cold. Just us laughing and having a good time. So we're sitting there, swapping dumb stories, talking about nothing, just laughing it up, when out of nowhere, this guy steps out of the trees. A young guy, probably our age, early 20s he looked, soaking wet, like he'd just crawled out of the lake. His hair's plastered to his head, clothes dripping, and he's got this confused look, like he's been wandering around or maybe lost for hours or something. We couldn't tell. We all just freeze, staring at him. One of my friends, Mike, finally asks, Hey, you okay, man? The guy nods, but he doesn't say much. We're all a little bit weirded out, but he doesn't seem dangerous or anything, so we offered him a seat by the fire, some food, beer if he wanted it. He didn't touch any of it. After a bit, he started to loosen up. He's quiet, kind of sad looking, but he joins in on the conversation like he's one of us. We're talking about nothing important, hiking, camping, stupid stuff that we did in college, and a whole bunch of other nothing. But he's polite, cracks a smile here and there, and for about an hour or so, it's like he just was another one of the guys hanging out. But there's something off about him, like his eyes had this faraway look. Then, as the fire's dying down, he gets real quiet. He looks around at all of us, and out of nowhere he says, I just wish things didn't end the way they did. We're all like, what? But before we could ask, he thanks us for the food. Although we declined it, he stands up and just walks off into the woods. No flashlight, no nothing. It was dark. He was just gone. We're all sitting there, kind of spooked, but we figured, well, maybe he's a hiker camping nearby, or maybe he had too much to drink and wandered into our camp and kind of got his head straight while he was talking to us. We put out the fire and headed to the tents. A little uneasy, but, we weren't freaking out or anything. It wasn't anything that weird. The next morning, though, everything changes. One of my buddies had one of those little battery-powered radios, and he flipped it on as we were making coffee. First thing we hear is a news report about a young guy who drowned in the lake. Our lake, the lake we were at. They describe him, and it's like they're talking about the guy from last night. About the same age, same build. Then comes the kicker, Sal. They say his body was found the day before we saw him. Like a full 24 hours before he walked into our camp. We all just stopped dead. Looked at each other. Nobody really said anything, but we're all thinking the same thing. How the hell did we spend an hour talking to a guy who was already dead? My stomach was doing flips. When we packed up to hike out later, we noticed something else that made my skin crawl. There were these faint footprints in the mud coming from the lake's edge, heading towards our camp where we had been. Then, maybe 20 feet into the woods, they just stopped. No more tracks, nothing. I don't know what we saw that night, Sal. A ghost, a spirit, somebody lost in between. I don't know. Was it something else? All I know is we sat around that fire, laughing and talking with a guy who wasn't supposed to be there. And those words he said, I just wish things didn't end the way they did. They still echo in my head sometimes. I don't know. Was he stuck there? Was he regretting and not knowing that he was really dead? And we don't even know how he drowned. We don't know if it was an accident, somebody did it. All we know is he seemed lost and stuck in between. Still gives me goosebumps to this day. That's Mike in Colorado. I feel it whisper, cold and near, a voice of smoke I shouldn't hear. It breathes my name without the light. The evil's calling me in the air tonight. We are here in the matrix of the mind, and you are sitting in the dark zone. WCAK 11:24 a.m. Halloween night.
They say every bottle of Oasis whiskey is aged in oak barrels deep underground, where no light reaches and no prayers are heard. The old distillers whisper that the barrels were cursed long ago, that each drop pulls something from the dark, something that wants out. So when you crack that seal, don't be surprised if the air changes. Don't be surprised if you feel a hand brush the back of your neck or a whisper that isn't your own, because Oasis whiskey isn't just strong, it's haunted. The spirits in the bottle aren't a metaphor. They've been waiting, and with every pour they slip a little further into the world, following the warmth, the laughter, the heartbeat. Drink carefully, friend. Oasis whiskey, rich, aged, unforgettable. Some spirits warm the soul. Others come looking for yours. Remember to make Oasis your basis for life.
Jack comes grinning through the night, eyes aflame, a burning light. Hide your face, don't make a peep. He finds the ones who don't yet sleep. Turn away, don't look, don't see. Jack's out hunting wild and free. Pumpkin grin and ember glow. He'll take your soul before you know.
Welcome back to the Dark Zone. WCAK 1124 AM. We are here on Halloween night reading emails that were sent in from the listeners of this show. As we head into the final section, we start off with Manny in Maine. Manny writes, Sal, I've got salt in my veins and wind in my bones. It's plain and simple. Been here in Booth Bay Harbor, Maine, my whole life. My father was a fisherman. His father before him was a fisherman. It's just what we do. There's a rhythm to the sea, you know. The creak of the dock, the waves, the whole thing. If you live it long enough, it just becomes the music that you walk to. But I'll tell you this. There's something else out there. Something that lives right at the edge of the fog. This happened to me maybe 20 years ago, early spring. The kind of cold that sticks to your clothes and makes your teeth ache. I was up before sunrise, like usual, nursing a mug of what was really bad coffee, I remember, ready to take the Evelyn Rose out for the day's haul. The town was still dead asleep. It was just me, the gulls, and that long, damp pier disappearing into that thick fog. As I got close to my boat, I saw a shape standing way out there, down at the end of the dock. Best I could see it. It wasn't moving. I figured it was just one of those younger guys heading out, maybe waiting for a buddy. But the closer I got, the more I could tell there was something just off, or something not right about him. He was wearing an old oilskin coat, the kind that you just don't see him anymore. That cracked, heavy yellow material. It looked soaked through, just hanging on him. His boots were half submerged in a puddle on the dock, and he didn't even seem to notice. He just stood there, looking straight out at the open water. I gave him a call, kept my voice, as easy as I could. I remember telling him, morning, you heading out? The man turned his head real slow towards me. His face was pale, almost gray, and his eyes, man, they were hollow and sharp, like there was a small light burning way back in his skull. When he spoke, his voice was thin, almost like it was the fog talking itself. I remember him saying, "Don't go out today." Just that plain and steady. I froze up and I asked him, what's that supposed to mean? He didn't answer right away, just stared through me. Those eyes, dark as the deep sea before the sun hits it. Then he said, "The sea's taken her due today. Stay ashore if you value your breath." Then he turned, took 2 steps towards the edge of the pier, and was just gone. Not walked off, not jumped in. It was just gone. Dissolved right into the mist like he was never there. I stood there for a good long while, my heart thumping against my ribs. Every bit of common sense I had told me just ignore it. Laugh it off. You're tired. You woke up too early. You're still half asleep. It's the fog playing tricks. But there was something in his voice, a chill that went right through my skin, and it just kind of stayed there. So I thought about it more, and I didn't go out. I spent most of the morning in the diner trying to warm my hands on some more bad coffee. It tasted like burnt harbor water, trying to shake the feeling. Around noon, the sky just went black. No warning, really, no buildup, just a sudden wall of wind and rain that slammed into the coast like a freight train. It hit fast, and it hit hard. The waves were breaking right over the pier. By the time it passed, we got the word. 3 boats went down about 15 miles offshore. They were able to pull 2 men out, but 2 never came back. One of those boats, it left from the same slip as mine. A few days later, I was cleaning up the debris down by the harbor, and old Captain Delaney, one of the oldest locals that we have, he would happen to be down there. I told him what I saw that morning, and he went quiet, staring at his boots. Then he told me about a fisherman named Caleb Ward. worked these same docks back in the 40s. Well, turned out Caleb drowned in a freak storm one spring morning. Body was never found, just his empty skiff. Delaney said folks used to whisper that the fog came in heavy. You could see this man in an old yellow coat standing on the pier, just like I did. They said he only appeared to warn the living when the sea was angry. That came from Manny in Maine. This comes from Terry in Ohio. Oh man, Sal, I don't even know where to start with this. This happened to me about 5 years ago, and I still can't sleep right sometimes. I'm just an average woman. You know, I'm in my mid-30s. I work in marketing. I'm just trying to get by like most of us. But that night in that old Victorian hotel, oh God, that changed everything. I was on a solo trip to this little town in upstate New York, trying to clear my head after 4 weeks of long, massive overtime hours. The place looked charming online. Big wraparound porch, antique furniture, all that vintage vibe stuff that I really love. The reviews said it was haunted in a fun way, but I laughed that off. Ghosts, please. I'm not some kind of kid that's scared in the dark. I checked in late, around 9 p.m. The owner was this sweet old lady named Mrs. Hargrove. She handed me the key to room 207. It's our quietest room, she said with a wink. But her eyes looked, I don't know, a little worried. I just shrugged it off, grabbed my bag, and headed up the creaky stairs. The hallway was dim, with those old gas lamp style lights. They were, flickering. It kind of took me back. I felt like I was the Victorian area. My room was at the end. There was a big 4-poster bed, lace curtains, a clawfoot tub in the bathroom. It smelled like lavender and dust. It was pretty comforting at first. I unpacked, took a hot shower, and slipped into my pajamas. By 11, I was in bed, scrolling on my phone, trying to unwind from the long drive. That's when the weird stuff started. At first, it was just the temperature. The room got cold, like someone had cranked up the AC, but there wasn't any AC. There was just an old radiator that was warm to the touch, so I pulled the blankets up. I figured it was a draft coming from the window. But then I heard it. A soft creak, like floorboard settling. Well, it's an old house, right? Happens all the time. I ignored it, turned off the light, and I closed my eyes. I must have dozed off for a bit because the next thing I know, I'm wide awake with my heart pounding. The clock on the nightstand said 1:13 a.m. The room was pitch black, but I don't know, I just felt watched. You know that prickly feeling on the back of your neck? Yeah, that one. Well, that's how I felt. I sat up, I fumbled for my phone, and turned on the flashlight. Nothing. Just the empty room. Shadows dancing from the beam. I told myself I was being stupid, and I laid back down. I did some deep breathing exercises and tried to relax. But then the bed dipped. Like actually dipped, Sal. On the other side, as if someone sat down. My blood ran cold. I froze, every muscle tense, listening. Nothing at first. Then another dip, closer. Like whatever it was scooting towards me. I could feel the mattress shift under the weight, and I thought, oh my God. My mind was racing. Is it a burglar or an animal? But no, the door was locked. Window shut. I whispered, hello? Like some idiot in a horror movie. Well, there was no answer. Just the sound of fabric rustling, like sheets being pulled back. That's when I felt it. A hand. Cold, clammy fingers brushing my arm under the covers. I froze and wanted to move, but I couldn't. I don't know if it was fear, or paralysis, or what, but I was just frozen there. The hand started rubbing my back and tried to pull me closer, and I snapped out of it. Pulled away, and I screamed. I scrambled out of the bed so fast I tripped over my own feet. Hit the floor hard, but I didn't care. I grabbed my phone again, shone the light around. Nothing. The bed looked empty, just like it looked when I got in it. The blankets were smooth, like I hadn't even been in it. But I swear, Sal, I felt that hand. It wasn't just cold, it was bony, long fingers. So I didn't wait. I threw on my coat over my PJs, grabbed my bag, and bolted down the stairs. Mrs. Hargrove was at the desk looking like she hadn't slept. "He touched you, didn't he?" she said. She wasn't even surprised. And it turns out room 207 was where some man died back in the 1890s. Suicide? Accident? Nobody really knows. But what they did know was that he had attacked 5 other women before his death. Guests did report feeling someone trying to join them in the bed. Hargrove said it usually just scared people off and there was no harm done. But that touch, it lingered on my skin for days like a bruise would have. I drove home that night, didn't stop till dawn. I listened to one of Art's old shows about entities that crave you, and I can tell you one thing. I lived it. That's Terry in Ohio. When I looked through the emails, I saved this one to close the show because I want people to ponder on this, and hopefully we can all learn a lesson from it. I'm just going to go ahead and read this and let you guys ponder. This comes from Alex in New Orleans. Sal, this is why I hardly ever sleep anymore. My name's Alex, I'm 34, and what happened to Mark, my best friend, my brother since kindergarten, it happened because of a cheap piece of cardboard we found in a thrift store, and the idiotic hubris that comes with being 21 years old and, well, thinking that you know everything. This happened back in 2011. We were living in a ridiculously cramped, cheap apartment near campus. Late one night, after a few beers, Mark pulls out this dusty old Ouija board he had bought. Well, I laughed, really? I looked at him, really? I told him it was just parlor tricks, magnets, psychologically, whatever. But Mark was the one who believed in ghosts. He was the soft one, the one who saw beauty in the creepy stuff. We sat down on the worn carpet in the living room, just us, 2 21-year-old morons, fingers resting on a plastic planchette. The lights were off, just a single ugly lamp burning in the corner, throwing shadows in the room that made the room feel twice as big as it really was. It was slow at first, and we sat there and we accused each other of pushing it, and he said, "Stop, Mark, I know that's you," and "Swear to God, Alex, I didn't move it," but then it started to move with purpose. Not jerky, not a nudge, it was gliding. It felt like someone else was in the room, something strong pressing down on the planchette using our hands as levers. We asked its name. It spelled out SYLA. When we asked what it wanted, it moved straight to DIE, die. That's when the mood changed. We weren't laughing anymore. I felt this incredible, suffocating pressure in the air. The temperature in that tiny, stuffy room dropped 10 degrees, I bet, in just a few seconds. I glanced up at Mark, and his eyes were wide. But they weren't just scared, they were fixed on something that was right over my shoulder. "Ask it why," Mark whispered. His voice felt thin and scared. I didn't want to, but I couldn't pull my hands away. I asked, "Why do you want us to die?" The planchette shot back to the numbers and letters, frantic now, and it spelled out MARKSINNER, Mark Sinner. Then it hovered over the word HUNGRY, hungry. Mark was terrified, but also weirdly fascinated, like he had finally found proof of the underworld. I slammed my hands down on the planchette and slid it to goodbye. The second I broke contact, the lamp in the corner flickered, the light bulb popped, and we were in absolute darkness. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the room. We bolted out of there, throwing the board into the dumpster behind the building. We agreed never to talk about it again, and we thought we would be safe. Well, Sal, we weren't. Over the next few weeks, things started focusing on Mark's. Small stuff, then bigger. His dog started barking at an empty spot in the kitchen, hair raised and whimpering. He'd wake up with scratches on his back that looked exactly like fingernails dug into his back. He was losing weight, terrified to be alone, but I had class, I had work, I was 20 hours a day. I couldn't be there every second. Well, he called me one Tuesday night crying. "It's whispering my name, Alex. It's coming from inside the walls." Well, I drove over immediately. The apartment was cold again, that unnatural, sterile cold feel. Mark was huddled in a blanket on the sofa, clutching a baseball bat. I sat with him, trying to be the voice of reason. I told him that he might be cracking up and he needed to get some sleep. So we just put on a calm movie and we watched for a while. Around 3 a.m., I finally drifted off into the armchair I was sitting in. I woke up because of a sound I still can't place. It wasn't a scream. It was more like a wet, desperate gasp or something. I shot upright. The living room was empty. Mark wasn't on the couch. I called his name. Nothing. Then I heard a heavy, rhythmic thumping coming from his bedroom down the hall, like a thump, thump, thump. I grabbed the baseball bat, my heart hammering against my ribs. I crept down the short hall. The bedroom door was slightly ajar, maybe like 3 inches. A shadow, a long, distorted thing, stretched across the wall from the gap. I pushed the door open. Mark was standing near the wall in the center of the room facing the window. He was completely naked, but that wasn't the worst part. He was slowly, methodically beating his head against the wall. That was the loud thumping that I heard. His hands were loose at his sides, his eyes rolled back white, and there was this small, dark smile stretched across his mouth that wasn't his. It was too wide for his mouth, and it looked very cruel. There was something else in that room. Not something I saw, but something that I knew. It was standing directly behind him, just outside of the line of my sight, pushing him. I felt this presence like a hand pressing on my chest, heavy, oily, ecstatic. The air was buzzing with silence and furious energy. I screamed his name. I dropped the bat. I rushed him. I grabbed his shoulders to pull him away from the wall. He went limp instantly. He just slid down, a smear of dark blood on the wallpaper behind him. As he collapsed, I saw, just for a split second, a deep red stain spreading rapidly across the back of his skull, right where he had been hitting himself. But when the cops arrived, they called it a sudden, violent, psychotic break, self-inflicted head trauma. They asked me if he was suicidal or if we did drugs. I told them no, neither. I told them everything that had happened over the course of the last months, about the board, about Silas. They wrote me down as a man shocked, traumatized, couldn't think straight because of his friend's tragic end. I know what I saw. I know what I felt. I didn't see a ghost. I saw an emptiness, a force that didn't just kill my friend. It used him to do it, and it smiled the whole time while it was doing it. The only thing I have left is the sound of that sickening thump and the knowledge that the thing that we talked to, the thing that we led into this world, got what it was hungry for. That comes from Alex in New Orleans. Now, Art Bell passed before we ever got the full story of what happened in his experience with the Ouija board. At least to the best of my knowledge, I don't believe that story ever came out that I have ever heard. But he was passing the same message that I hope that we all took from this last story, which is, do not play with a Ouija board or a voodoo doll or anything else that will open that doorway to the darkness that you do not want coming back into your life. Because once you open that, you're not going to be able to shut it, at least not very easily. I want to thank you all for being here tonight on this Halloween special, and I want to thank the listeners of this show that sent in the emails that we got to enjoy tonight. Happy Halloween, everybody. Have a terrifying evening and a wonderful evening. Good night, America.
Step by step it draws in near, breath of frost, the taste of fear, claws of shadow, eyes that glow, it comes to reap the life you owe. Run or pray, it takes its toll, the night has has come to claim your soul. The night 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 has come to claim your soul.